I'd like to call the Village of Lansing Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, November the 30th, 2021 at 7 to order at 7:02 p.m. Approval of minutes from November the 8th. Do we have minutes from November the 8th? Mike?
Sent them out, didn't I? But I'm pretty sure you guys have them.
I don't remember them, honestly.
Mm,
Can somebody else help me on this?
look 'em.
I don't remember seeing them.
I don't either. Maybe I saw them. Should we?
Right there.
Did I respond to you? Well, let's put it this way.
Let me. They were sent out.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't remember them. I'd like to refresh my memory on them.
Yeah, can we hold it until the next meeting?
Yeah, can we do that, please?
Yeah,
I don't want to slow us down, but, and we can get to that. Okay, so we will defer until 11:30. No, this is 11:30 until 12:13.
Okay,
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public comment period for any issues that are not already on the agenda. Is there anyone in our audience this evening that has something they would like to bring forward to the planning board for us to hear about that is not on the agenda, as I said? If so, please raise your hand. I don't see anyone. Monica? Oh, I see a little, one of those little white glove things on you, I don't know why. It's something to do with my mouse, which is.
Oh,
odd.
it's your mouse, yeah.
Yes, I was gonna say it's
Yeah.
my mouse. Okay, there being no one who wishes to speak, I would entertain a motion to close the public comment period, please.
I move that we close the public comment period.
Mike
I will
Baker,
second.
Jim, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Moving along, the next item on the agenda is to continue the public hearing for special permit number 2021-4516. Arrowhead Ventures, Trax Management Group to develop Area B of the Lansing Meadows Plan Development Area, which includes 18 single-family senior housing units. Tax parcel number 47.1-1-17.21 and 47.1-1-17.29. This project is directly adjacent to the standalone retail center BJ's Wholesale Club, Area A, and the proposed commercial section A1 of the PDA that is adjacent to the shops at the Ithaca Mall. So we have been working on special conditions as we move forward, or conditions for this special permit. Mike, Scott, and Natalie and I have been working to try to get them into some sort of trying to move this along so that we could perhaps meet the goal of finalizing this no later than our next meeting. I think that basically as we were discussing this, the three of us, and trying to come up with the appropriate language, the absolute main goal is simply to see this project brought to fruition and completion. So that said, I'd just like to start going down through each of these conditions, and everyone please chime in if you have any concerns, have any questions. I know that Brent has sent us some documents late this afternoon that we'll probably be discussing, but please just bring up whatever you want to about this. I think it's important. We have tonight with us, for those of you who don't know him, we know Eric Getzman, and his attorney, John Lange, is with us this evening.
Good evening.
So starting down, we have our usual A. Do we want to share, would you like share screen at this point, or,
It's being shared,
oh, it is?
I think. No,
I
I'm sorry.
don't see it.
I'm looking at my own version. Sorry.
I was to say, wow, I don't see it.
I'm looking at my own version. Sorry.
Your own version.
You want to do it, Natalie, or you want me to? Okay.
Okay, excuse the typos if I make changes as we go. All right, okay, here we go.
And as I was saying earlier to Mike, the screen is shared, I can't see, if you would like to speak, I can't see whether your hand is raised necessarily. So please don't feel rude about interrupting and just saying, may I speak, or just. Okay, so we have, starting out, some of the easier ones, the soil and erosion control measures. That's one of our standard ones. I think the real goal on some of the more standard ones is that we would like to see written sign off by the appropriate stakeholders and whatever it is, just to be sure there's no confusion that this was approved and what version was approved. And so that's the main goal for some of these things, which we've been told have been completed, but I don't know if we actually have written approval of which plan has been approved, when, and by whom. So that
So,
said, we have,
yeah, Lisa, that was actually kind of what my goal was in sending that message out very late this afternoon, was to fulfill condition A. But you bring up a good point that I would like to edit that before the next meeting to insert the actual dates of some of those significant events, but that the difference between this condition A and a normal condition A is normally there isn't already a soil and erosion control plan approved by the DEC. And in this case, we've got one that's been active for a number of years, and that although my attempt, when I sat down and started writing, I didn't know where to begin my approval. So I went through and relived it in my mind. And so you don't have to reread the whole thing, but I thought it might be important, as this is a new document or a new approval, that my report kind of reflect the entire scope of what's happened, not just the reapproval. So there's a lot of background and backstory there, which we all know and we all kind of live through, but that in the end it's a confirmation that the fulfillment of A has already effectively been satisfied, or I should say is an active open permit with the village and the DEC, and that I'll continue to monitor, inspect, and enforce that condition throughout the life of the project, and that these things always culminate with a final sign off that the village has to sign off on to recommend to the DEC that the local I think it's called a local certification. And so all of that is already in place and just is in the process of being played out. So I think that email was intended to just check that box for you.
okay, great. So we can move along then to B, approval by the Village of Lansing engineer and stormwater officer of the stormwater management and infrastructure plans. And I guess your comments would apply to this one as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't address it because, as it turns out, there are easements involved in the project for the purpose of water mains and sewer connections, but I'm not sure that there are any land that's going to be given to the village in terms of easements, other than I think later on in the wherever we have it for the stormwater maintenance agreement, that requires kind of a generic easement to allow for village employees to enter upon the property in the event that there's a need for a, you know, like kind of an emergency cleanup or something like that. But I don't think it's specific to meets and bounds of any particular access to the land. I think I saw John Lange shaking his head. I'm assuming that sounds familiar to you.
There's a standard stormwater maintenance agreement that the DEC, the model I've used with my towns, and presumably that's what you're referencing. I don't have any issues with it, but I see Mike Scott's got his hand up, so you
Yeah,
might have a
I was
point.
gonna say,
Oh, I just wanted to bring up, we started to get on easements, and that was one of the things I had mentioned to Eric as a possible condition, but we didn't put it in here, but what the situation is with the easements for example, like our sewer easements for the village, that type of stuff. What's the situation with that, Eric?
Well, there's three easements we're working on. One, the meets and bounds and everything have been assembled for the easements for the sewer. The attorney's drawing that agreement up. We have easements to the electric company, NICEAG. Those are actually filed. And the third easement, which will go along with the sewer, will be the easements we have for the sidewalk going north-south and a 5-foot right-of-way, which are given the village along Oak Crest, along the setback. And those easements, the meets and bounds have been done, assembled, and the attorneys are assembling those easements now.
Will we have some type of first draft here shortly? Do you like before the next meeting, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
I don't know, Lisa, whether you want to have that in there or we just run with it. That's up to you guys.
no, I think it's always best for the future to document these things so that, you know, it's all there. Especially if, you know, it's part of what has to be done before we can approve this, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so we might as well
As
put
a
it in.
As a condition, it doesn't necessarily have to be physically done, but it's a condition that
Right.
will
Yes.
commit to doing that.
Exactly. So, Eric, there were easements for the sewer, for the NICEAG, and for sidewalk?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
What about
right.
water main?
Water main's private.
Okay.
Okay. C, required permits approval from all applicable. That's pretty standard. I don't know. I guess that's just, well, that's just a kind of coverall thing. Okay, so now we get into some of the ones that we don't always require. Prior to a certificate of compliance being issued for phase 2, buildings 8 and 14, a maintenance agreement shall be submitted to and approved by the village attorney, village engineer, and village stormwater management officer pertaining to the stormwater facilities. Any problems there?
No problem, but just a comment to John Lange that I suspect that the document you're referring to as the boilerplate from the DEC is effectively the same or similar to the one that we've been using over the years. So Mike, do you know who we have? Is that in Natalie's possession? Or do
Brad, we have a copy of that. And that's one we're working on right now. So we're
Okay.
used before.
Okay.
E then is a landscaping plan shall be submitted to and approved by the Village of Lansing Planning Board prior to the installation of any plantings per village landscaping policy adopted in January 21, 2002 by resolution 3827. There should not be a dash in there. and Village Code Section 145-24, continual maintenance of the buffer between existing commercial and new residential areas is required. I don't believe that we have actually formally approved the landscaping plan. I think you gave it to us and you spoke to it last time, Eric, saying you'd made some changes, but I don't think we actually voted on that. I think Mike Scott, you mentioned that to me the last time. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, you've actually never officially approved it.
Right. So that's a kind of a loose end that.
Would that all be captured in the ultimate final approval that we're looking to heading towards here and be buttoned into it?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
The other just request, I apologize. I only had this afternoon to begin reading these as they've been modified. Some of them I've seen before. Can I get a copy at some point of resolution 38-27 of 2002, just for my records?
Yeah, and I should let you know, actually, that the copy that I have, when I went and investigated this was some time ago on a totally separate matter. They had put the incorrect resolution number on it, but yes, it is a rather old document. I don't know if it even exists electronically, but yes, we can certainly give you that.
Thank you.
So copy 3827. Okay, upon approval of a special permit, an escrow account will be established and funded within 2 days in the amount of 152,859 is determined by the Village Lansing Board of Trustees in connection with the building of a sidewalk along Oak Crest Road within the village right-of-way where the subject property is located. Failure to establish and fund said escrow account will result in the immediate termination of special permit number 2021-4516. If the applicant fails to complete the work by July 26, 2022, the village may use the escrowed funds to complete the work.
So we had just a couple comments, if I can start the discussion.
Yes, I would expect that. Go ahead.
One of them is typically with escrow funds of this amount, there's typically an side escrow agreement between the town and the developer with in this case, the village, where there would be instances where as work is completed to the satisfaction of the village, there are opportunities to reduce that escrow amount to reflect only the amounts that are left to be completed through that period of time. And I was going to ask is whether the village has utilized a formal escrow agreement in these types of matters.
Mike Scott, can you answer that for me? Because I have no, we don't really handle that money aspect.
No, I mean, in general, I don't either. I know what you're saying because that would be the same type of escrow that Brent Cross has pointed out that we would need for a development for the infrastructure and whatnot. As the roads are being built, then of course that amount agreed upon is returned so that it doesn't strap the contractor for the full amount until the end of it. That's basically what you're talking about, right, John?
So, well, I'm speaking on my own behalf for my municipal clients. We typically have, well, you can call it what you like, but we typically have an subdivision or whatever it might be. It's a improvements, construction, maintenance agreement. And there's a portion of it that discusses the escrow, and there are opportunities in that agreement to make application as you get to certain levels of completion after it's been signed off on by the village engineer. They'll certify that X, Y, or Z has been done. They'll recalculate the amount that would keep the village in good position. And then the developer can request a partial release of those funds. And we'd like to be sure that there's an opportunity to include that in any final resolution.
So that wording can actually be done within the wording of the escrow, correct? So it's something that you could do, Natalie, when you do the escrow.
John and I can work together on that if the board is okay with that type of structure.
Yeah, John, I am familiar with that. Not in my former life. In this life, I would have to talk to our clerk, but I don't.
Yes, I can verify that we've used that process in other projects. But as Mike pointed out, it's embedded into the subdivision approval process. So I don't know if it needs to have a separate, as John's suggesting, like a standalone agreement, but maybe Natalie will be able to fold it into some kind of whatever the condition is. But yes, we have used that type of process in the past.
And I have sample agreements I can share with Natalie. I'm sure she has, her office has some too. And I would think that the village probably doesn't want to hold on to, 100% of the money when we get to the very end of it, when it's not necessary. And I think Mike had mentioned, it becomes the ability for us to pay contractors as we go along the way.
Does anybody on the board have any objections to that? Again, I can't see you, so if you do, just speak up, but it seems a reasonable thing to me to draw down the amount as, I would like to have the process for approval of the work being completed and approved by whatever, spelled out pretty clearly though.
Mhm.
Okay, moving to G, an escrow account. So it obviously will apply to this, I would assume as well. An escrow account shall be established and funded in the amount. Are we ready to move along, Natalie? It's okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
An escrow account shall be established and funded in the amount to be determined by the Village of Lansing Board of Trustees and Department of Public Works for the completion of the connection running through the eastern portion of the A-1 parcel. A1 is always hyphenated. Well, it is in the code anyway. To Hickory Hollow Road. Upon written notification of the escrow figure, the applicant shall fund the escrow account within, and that's up to us to decide tonight what we think would be appropriate. Failure to establish a fund said escrow account will result in the same language as the above. So again, I'm assuming, Mr. Lange, you would want to have a side contract for this?
But number one, yes, but I know Eric and I had just a moment to talk about that. I know Eric had some thoughts about the timing of that. I'll let Eric speak to it. But I do think we need to have some, I just went dark in here. Sorry, guys. I got a motion sensor in my office. Doesn't know I'm moving. But we do want to make sure we nail down this language appropriately. We understand, and at the end of the day, the village needs to be fully protected with these escrow amounts. But we also want to make sure that they're realistic and that the timing ties in with the other potential conditions that we're discussing right now.
And I think, Lisa, one thing I mentioned with John on this earlier was, this is a new, I think, condition was put on here, and I understand they want money for it. This also ties back to, we do the sidewalk along Oakcrest. It's our full intention to do the sidewalk along here at one time. We'll have the people mobilized, they'll be doing it. We'll do as much work as we can before the winter comes. We can't pour concrete once it gets to a certain point. But if I had asked the board to take a look at this, because the escrow above is probably more than substantial to build all of what you're looking at here. If we can look at this, because it's not a dollar amount that has never been brought to the Board of Trustees, this is something that we intend to get done as quickly as possible. If we could put a date on this thing, because this also ties back to N, the following condition. It says the deadline for completion of phase 1, that all infrastructure, site work, sidewalks, landscaping has to be done by July 26, 2022. So
Right.
that condition is that's got to be done, and we can't get it. There's a whole bunch of other things tied to it too. So if I could put a note on here just to take some of the confusion out of the timing, maybe we can put a date on here, like if the sidewalk isn't built by July 1st, then we have like 7 days to fund this. And if it's not done by 26, you have all your other rights to pull our permits and everything else. That gives you, if we're not done, the ability, we have to fund it. If we don't fund it, you can shut us down. But we fully intend to get this thing done and built as quickly as possible.
Let me ask you, so you're talking about G only?
Just G only, yeah, because G is one we don't have a dollar amount. We don't know. I mean,
Right.
we looked at it, and instead of putting John or anybody else through that, it will be built before it gets to address it. And if
So-
it doesn't, you have like, I would give a date like July 1st. If it's not done by July 1st, then we have 7 days to fully fund and escrow whatever number we suggest that costs to build that. Because you have the same condition locked in N, which says basically this all has to be done by July 26th anyhow that year.
Right. So you're saying that in regards to this, you would like to not have to provide an escrow unless you don't complete the work by July 1st.
Right.
Like that, Eric?
I'm sorry.
What did you say, Natalie?
I'm trying to follow along and take notes, so I'm trying to make sure I understand.
Yeah, that's no, you have it right. If said connection is not completed by July 1st, 22, upon written notice of escrow figure, the applicant shall fund the escrow account within, call it 7 days. Failure to establish
Why
it,
wouldn't we do it the 2 days like we did the last time?
2 days is fine. I just,
It makes it easier to remember for me anyway.
okay.
I guess I should, God. I guess I should ask whether it's business days.
That's
We
a good
have to worry
question.
about business days, calendar days. And I recently came across something where calendar days were considered what I think of as business days. I consider business days Monday through Friday. But what does everyone think about that?
Business days is fine. I'm sorry.
Should it be business days in both of these is my point.
I would say yes.
Well, I'm looking
Whatever
for
you
my,
put for, it should be for the same for all.
yes, I was gonna say, does the board feel comfortable with business days or do you want it to be calendar days?
Business days is fine.
Yeah, business days is good.
Okay,
Business day makes more sense.
yep, I think so too. Okay, so it's business days both in G and in F. I think we have to go back and pick that up there. Okay,
Well,
good.
isn't it? That it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so far. Okay, failure to establish fund shall result in immediate termination if they may use the escrowed funds. Okay. So that is the second one that we need an agreement for.
Mhm.
Okay, moving to H. Upon approval of the special permit, an escrow account for landscaping for phase 2. This is where the last two buildings are. Will be established and funded within 2 business days in the amount of $15,000. Failure to establish and fund said escrow account will result in immediate termination, blah, blah. The village may use the escrow funds to landscape the open space now designated for phase 2 buildings 8 and 14 if condition M is not met by July 26th. Condition M being the foundations in for phase 2, because we really don't want to just let that whole area sit there exposed to BJ's if progress is not made, was the intention of this.
Could I add something to that, Lisa?
Please go ahead.
This is a similar situation we've discussed. The reason that landscaping would not be installed because it would probably be killed during the construction because it's so close to the property.
Right,
And I don't have the issue of submitting an escrow payment of 15,000. I'm not going to be able to plant those until next fall anyhow, until foundations are in, until that's the time we want to plant the trees.
well, the intention, Eric, here is that if you should not get to the foundations for those 2 buildings, we would reserve the right to
Okay, so
plant
it's only.
a buffer in there, because it will have to, obviously, if you aren't able to meet condition M, which is to get those, the foundation work in, we're gonna have some other issues, right?
Right.
So, it
So
was
is this if we don't get the foundations in, we have to fund this?
Yes.
Or is this? So when?
No,
we
you have to fund it, and it's being held in escrow for the possibility that the foundations are not completed, is what it says to me.
we
As
have
I
to-
said at the beginning, our only goal here is to get this project
I understand. I'm just
Right.
asking, I can't plant these until next fall anyhow with the construction going on there. So I'm just asking if it's tied to sometime in that time frame. That's all.
We're not expecting you to plant anything. It's only if you don't get your foundations in that we would take this money and use it to plant something for you.
I understand. So
Okay.
I guess I'm asking the board, is it possible to fund at that time if it doesn't happen?
I
Only
think-
because right now you're asking me to fund it within 2 days of this approval. And I can't remedy the situation until next fall. So the funds are just going to sit in the account. That's what I'm asking. I don't have an issue giving the escrow so you can plant the trees. But it's, if I can't try and get it done until a certain date, I'm just asking to get a closer date to fund that. That's all.
Could I hear from my board, please?
Right.
I think I'd like it funded. Oh, sorry. Tony, go ahead.
Go ahead, Monica.
I think I'd like it funded now. We can do a condition that if M is met, we can release those funds on the 25th. Whenever those foundations are poured, we can release the funds at that point, but I kind of want the funds now in the event that if those foundations aren't poured, then we've got bigger problems. So.
I
Tony?
agree with that. I agree with that. Monica said it, what I was going to say. Thank you, Monica.
Mike or Jim, do you have anything that you'd like to give input on?
I agree with Monica and Tony on just funding it now.
And I will make it 4.
And I will make it 5.
The only one thing I'd point out, and maybe Eric has more, another thought on it, is when we're going to get to condition N as in Nancy shortly. And that establishes the deadline for completion of phase 1, and it breaks phase 1 and includes landscaping for phase 1. And then it's sort of an all or nothing thing. So the landscaping, I just asked Eric, that landscaping issue on phase 1, is that the same issue Eric will have in terms of when you should be planting landscaping improvements so that they're going to survive? Is that something that can really be done in the middle of the summer of this summer, July 26, 2022? Is that going to be viable for those plantings?
For phase 1, you're talking.
For phase 1, so I'm sort of looking to Eric for some input on that so that I don't overlook something we should be talking about.
John, you raise an issue there for planting trees and so forth in the middle of July.
So I just, there's a scenario there where if we did the planting and it's at the wrong time of the year and it all dies, and we've done that for naught. And Eric had mentioned some of the other landscaping issues about making it more realistic to plant them in the fall, when the plantings have a greater opportunity to establish themselves and make it through for the long haul. So Eric, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I guess if we just is it possible to take landscaping out of N and just put it?
Why don't we go back to what we were talking about? We're still talking about phase 2, correct? And now we're getting into phase 1. Okay, the intent of this is pretty obvious, I think, is that we want to ensure that if phase 2 is not commenced by July 26, 2022, we have the right to plant some sort of something there to buffer that open raw space and the loading dock at BJ. So there are supposed to be some trees along there. It's not clear to me still whether those trees are even going to fit in there. And maybe Eric would like to comment on that, the buffer between BJ's and these two buildings, that whole row of, I think they were cedars of some sort. Is there any question that those will fit?
No, we've walked through there and the Green Giants, that's why we changed them out to the Green Giants, the cedars, that they fit back.
Okay.
in there.
So you're so is what John is talking about those trees now? Because that's not, I don't think, what we're talking about when we're talking here in H.
Rob, I think Yeah, I think what John was bringing it back, that N incorporates that also, I guess. So is that also part of it? And then we'd be in breach of it by not being able to plant those, because those with the construction all the way around that won't be planted till the fall.
So even if so you're saying not just the foundations, you're talking about the framing and everything.
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
So you're driving around that all the time.
right, that makes sense to me. Okay, but the point of this, yeah, is somebody need to say something? The point of this is really, what can the village do to make the site more attractive if you do not get to the foundations of phase 2 by July 26, 2022? That's what H is about. So that's all it is about, honestly.
And also, Lisa, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't know whether you can see me or not, but Mr. Leahy, when you brought up N, as far as doing the plantings in July, I would assume that you're going to do your plantings in the spring, because you're basically your 4 units for that site to complete phase 1 are pretty much complete anyway. So I don't know why it would be waiting until July 26th to plant trees. So I guess I just don't understand what the holdup would be for waiting till the fall to plant things.
I understand your comment.
I think John's just looking at the trees along behind the foundation, Mike.
Yeah, my experience with most of the larger projects that we've handled is a lot of the plantings, and I hear what Mike's saying about a spring planting. That's also a terrific time to plant. But oftentimes at a project that's going to be around for a long time, we see a lot of the plantings happen in the more comfortable time of the fall for those planting. I just throwing it out there to ask Eric what he thought about that. So it's difficult because I'm up here in Syracuse and he's at his place, so I can't speak to him directly about it. But okay, I just wanted to make note of that.
I just don't want to confuse these two because they are separate,
I understand, yeah.
That's my main thing. So I think it's clear from what we've all said, though, that we do want it funded up front and not, wait until it's not met and then go into it. So moving along to I, written approval by the Village of Lansing Superintendent of Public Works of the plan for all proposed sidewalks, curb cuts, and sidewalk connections required to be installed. Now, I know that, and all our intentions here, even when these have been completed, is I would like a document submitted to Mike Scott, signed off by the appropriate personnel, dated, and again, with the plan attached for Mike, so that we know exactly which plan we're talking about. That's always the goal with anything that written approval. I believe that it's been satisfied. Moving to J, written approval by the SCLIWC Bolton Point of the water consumption proposed for the occupancy of the new buildings shall be provided to the Village of Cayuga Heights and the Village of Lansing for the issue of the required sewer permits. I believe probably, Eric, you might have that already. And if you just be sure that, if you do not, that you obtain it, and again, with the appropriate plan and whatnot submitted to the appropriate people. I guess, is that Brent that would get it? I don't know who gets it at the Village of Cayuga Heights, but for us, of course, it's Mike. K, written approval by the Village of Cayuga Heights of the sewer system, which I think we have that this evening. Brent sent us. However, he did make note that there's a general, I guess, procedure. He said that each of the sewer permits has a placard issued to you with a place for the signature of the Cayuga Heights DPW. And who will be in consultation with John Courtney before signing off. So we want to be sure that we have a copy of the signed placard for each of the dwelling units before issuing certificates of occupancy. written. Now, I don't know where we stand. Mike Scott, where do we stand with L? Because we weren't sure whether we had to go back again for this project for a 239.
Yeah, GML 239 was originally sent in at the beginning of special permit 4123. I found no reason to resubmit. The project has not changed.
Okay.
So I found no reason to resubmit it.
Okay.
So can we mark that one as accomplished at this point?
We can. Yes, I guess so. Now we get to the deadline for completion of the foundation work for phase 2 buildings 8 and 14 is the scheduled planning board meeting of July 26, 2022. Eric, any comment?
No.
Great. And the deadline for, okay, here we are, for completion of phase 1 being buildings 2, 20, 26, 32, and all site infrastructure, site work, sidewalk, and landscaping for phase 1 is the scheduled planning board meeting of July 26, 2022. Do we want to, that is for those buildings, right? For phase 1? Does that not do what actually, or address the concern Mr.
Yes.
Langy has, because it's phase 1? Well, it doesn't address the trees behind phase 2 buildings, does it?
If we could just maybe insert there, the trees behind, I think Mike's calling building 814.
Does anybody have any objections to that?
I want to make sure I understand, because I was going to point out the same thing. You don't want to complete the plantings for phase 1 where they might be impinged by construction of phase 2. So
Right.
we're really asking for partial completion of the plantings for phase 1. I think that's what Eric was just starting to say. I don't know whether you want to put that in words or is that understood? Once we have a plan, an accepted plan for the plantings that will include everything to be done for both phase 1 and phase 2, then it's really the best judgment as to how much of the phase 1 plantings should go in by July 26th of next year. Is that,
I think,
am I being
I think-
helpful here? It's
I
clear to
think-
me, it's clear to me that you don't want to plant everything back there that you might then run over while you're doing the foundation work or the construction work on the phase 2 buildings.
right, I think we all agree about that. I think what's a little confusing with this language perhaps, which I don't think which is why we're having this discussion in Split, is that we also want, however, not just the landscaping, but all site infrastructure, sidewalk, and site work completed in addition to that landscaping. So the landscape, I don't want the landscaping to lead the charge here, honestly. What we're really looking for is that all site infrastructure and landscaping as not impinged by, I guess we could say, something about phase 2, you know, that we
Lisa?
might, yeah,
Yeah, sorry, no, I think I agree with what Tony was saying. Do we ever delineate the plantings for phase 1 versus phase 2? Because I don't think we have. So when we
No.
approve the final planting, let's delineate phase 1 and phase 2 in that final approval. And in that final approval, phase 1 could not have that back row of greenery to shield BJ's. We'll put that in phase 2 and then the problem's solved.
Yeah.
okay.
I think there's a little more to that though, too. I think if you can just say building 814, because you have trees all around 814, you have shrubs in the front, you have shrubs around the back. So it's really anything that, you know, you're driving around those buildings.
Yeah, and so we can delineate that when we approve the planting plan. We can delineate exactly which shrubs need to be put in phase 1. Like exactly to the shrub. We can just tell you exactly what you need to do.
Because that is, those buildings are the phase 2 buildings, right, Eric?
Yes, that's all. I was
Okay.
saying. I was just saying the phase 2 buildings to clarify.
Yeah, I think we should always refer to phase 2 as buildings 8 and 14, because it's very confusing otherwise.
I think at this point, poor Natalie's probably slightly like me, trying to understand how this is gonna read.
I know.
In the
Me
next
too.
iteration. And I think it'll benefit everybody to assist her by perhaps, if like another draft of it ends up going, I mean, she's doing the redlining of it now, makes it very helpful, but if we can, I don't know if Eric and somebody from the board can provide language to Natalie that captures what everybody hears. We're all agreeing to something here. The question is, how do you articulate it on the page?
And it sounds
I
to
feel
me
like
like
Eric knows, and as some of the board members know what needs to get on that page.
Natalie?
it's sounding to me like what Monica is suggesting is that we leave the language as is, but then the landscaping gets clarified in a separate landscaping plan as to what is phase 1 landscaping and what is phase 2 landscaping.
Yes,
Is that right, Monica?
Yeah, that's correct.
you got it.
So basically just mark that on the landscaping plan and approve that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we have not yet approved the landscaping plan, so that may be serendipitous, actually.
Well, maybe we can hit that after this, if it's one thing we can take a look at, because that plan it's incorporated all our comments from the last numerous meetings we've had.
Right.
And, you know, the other question is, perhaps the minutes of this meeting will do a good job of articulating this discussion as well. Whoever's doing the final preparation of the minutes could flesh that out a little bit, so it becomes an aid down the line, understanding what we're agreeing to.
That's the wonderful part about having the recording, I think.
I agree.
We'll be sure that we capture that. But I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that. Nobody wants plantings to be put in that are just going to die. But you understand, of course, that we have an interest in making it look good. Okay, so we have now moved along to O. The deadline for completion of phase 2, buildings 8 and 14, is the scheduled planning board meeting of October 31, 2023. Any comments? So we're talking actually almost 2 years from now for those last 2 buildings. Our hope, I'm sure, is that it will be sooner, but we'll see. P, if any deadline under this special permit is not met, an applicant in the sole discretion of the planning board has provided no reasonable basis for delay, the planning board reserves the right to take up a proposal to void special permit number 2021-4516 or take such other action as the board deems appropriate. Do I have any comments from Eric or Mr. Lange on that?
No, I think I'll take this opportunity to thank the board for considering many of our suggestions, and we appreciate you meeting us halfway on many of these. So I don't have any comments on that.
Okay. Q should not be a problem, either consistent with the PDA requirements. Senior housing is the purpose of this development. R, the roadway in the proposed plan development shall be a one-way roadway and privately held. No problem there. S, all open spaces in the proposed development area shall be graded, landscaped, and maintained by the applicant. Could you just go back for a minute, Natalie? Something. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, I needed to just see. Eric, in the past, we talked about, I know this is somewhat detailed, but it was something about where you put mailboxes and how that works. Do you have to put them on your private roadway or do they go on the main, on Oak Crest?
I don't know that answer.
There was something about that. Where do you think you're going to be putting your mailboxes? I don't know. I don't know why I thought of that the other day, and I thought, oh, it was, so I don't mean to get off, but would you kind of check and see, because there may be some restrictions about whether they would deliver to each unit. I don't know how that works. But it's something that I don't know.
What's Mike Scott, or maybe anyone knows, East Point, are those cluster
That's right.
mailboxes or individuals?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Mike. I was trying to.
Because
remember where they
that's a
had-
privately held road too, so I would imagine it's similar.
I think.
I think East Point, I remember from having driven through there that East Point is cluster, because I remember thinking that in the winter time, that would be a real inconvenience for the residents.
Yeah, I recall it being cluster too, so either way.
Well, it's just something your tenants are going to need to get their mail somehow. So something that was just a loose end that really, I'm sorry to get us off track, but all right. Okay, moving along then, all open space. Okay, so we're here to T. No certificate of compliance shall be granted until all infrastructure, landscaping, and sidewalk work for the site has been completed by applicant. If applicant applies for a temporary certificate of occupancy prior to the completion of said work, the applicant must establish and fund separate escrows for the completion of the phase 1 landscaping and or the A1 sidewalk in the amounts determined by the village's engineers and Department of Public Works. The temporary certificate of compliance shall not be issued until such escrow are established and funded. If applicant has issued a temporary certificate of compliance and has not completed all phase 1 landscaping and A- sidewalk work by July 26, 2022, then the village may use the escrowed funds to complete the remaining work. Does anything here contradict what we have previously established?
If there's maybe one, I mean, I understand this in the original one that we had, and I know we're modifying it. The original one was basically, they're always tied to a certificate of compliance.
Right.
And that was until the sidewalk and the infrastructure was in, we couldn't get a certificate of compliance. And if they weren't done, then we were required to issue the escrow, pay the escrow. That's the way it was in the past. And I think this has been kind of put together with some of the new comments, with the old comments. But now we've taken a step further, and the sidewalk is no longer tied to certificate of compliance. Now you want it funded within 2 days. So I think that addresses what was looked at. I think now we're trying to reach back, because there's things in here, no certificate of compliance can be granted until landscaping and sidewalk. Well, the sidewalk's not going to be, I can't pour concrete until next May. So that's not going to happen till then. You know, it's our hope to have people live in these homes within 30 days. You know, the landscaping is not going to go until next spring. So I think this may have been come together in bits and parts and trying to drag it together. But I think if the sidewalk is funded, you have the escrow money, you have the money to step in my shoes and build it, you've really reached the goal you were trying to reach. So I think a lot of this is just trying to go back again. And I can't get certificate of occupancy because I can't do landscaping and sidewalk. So I would ask the board to take a look at maybe removing a lot of this, because we already have it, and you've already got me issuing the escrow for the sidewalks, which addresses what this whole thing came from originally, the original permit.
What about the A1 sidewalk?
Well, that we already have that now tied.
There is one loose end, Mike, I've just finished first, there is a loose end about the whole Hickory Hollow connection, but I think we have to discuss that. Mike, what do you have to say?
Well, I mean, you're partially right, Eric, except that there's nothing in there to have an escrow for the actual plantings for phase 1. So if you were to typically in the village, if there's a project going on, if you were to request a temporary certificate of compliance, you would have to put into escrow what would be left, the money that would be left to actually get your final certificate of compliance. So this was put in there after my conversation with you, because you had said, okay, what happens when you get all of your water parts, say you get them next month and you happen to be able to supply water to all 4 buildings. Well, now those buildings can also be temporarily, they could get a temporary CFC.
Okay,
You know, this kind of protects you along with protecting the village. I mean, this allows you to make revenue when all the other remaining parts of the site and the landscaping and the sidewalk, they have escrows for them. So this allows you to generate revenue without those being done.
okay, so Mike, you're saying that I can get a temporary certificate of compliance until all those in, and I can complete those by next summer.
You can get a temporary, get people in there, but you're gonna have an escrow for the sidewalk established, for A1 established, the A1 sidewalk, I mean, and for landscaping.
Right.
But you're able to generate revenue.
Right. All right, I guess I just gotta read this again. I just.
I was
started
gonna say, I
reading
think we all need to take another look at this and just absorb it.
it. Okay. I hear what you're saying, so let's do that.
Okay, no certificate of compliance will be granted for phase 1, building 32 until the completion of O for buildings 8 and 14. O being the deadline for completion of phase 2 buildings is October 31, 2023.
Yeah, and I guess I would have a question on this one because it's saying building 32 is the last building up by the YMCA. You know, we're looking to, again, if the water gets turned on in 30 days, we want to have people living in there. And what this is saying that we can't get a certificate of compliance until those next 2 buildings are built. And that completion date is 2023. So
Right.
that doesn't connect. The dots don't connect there.
I don't disagree.
And I
with that.
understand the goal is to get it done, but again, these 4, we've got the ability to get people in these homes. They look great on the inside. I'd like to get people in here.
Any comments from the board members?
I agree. I don't think that's necessary.
I don't. I agree also.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It seems to be, yeah.
I agree.
Okay, I think we have total agreement on, I think Tony's did I hear Tony? I didn't.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, all right. So that is now our new U. No certificate of compliance will be granted for phase 1 until area A1 has been subdivided from the residential area B. Now, I know last time, Eric, you indicated you had some problem with that.
That was right, Eric did. I'll let him talk about it as well, but just from a financing perspective, that could be an issue. And on the flip side of it, the only thing I would respectfully ask is the requirement of the subdivision. I just want to understand how it benefits the village and the project to make that a condition to this approval. I'm asking for a better understanding of the reasoning behind the condition.
I think actually it may be, I think Monica stated it last time pretty clearly, which is that we want to see area B, the project, phases 1 and 2 completed before anything happens on A1. Now, maybe that is covered by V as adequately.
I was gonna say, I think that I don't think you know, does anything for the village necessarily, and it almost seems punitive if there's, and I think Eric, we talked about it a little bit last time. It almost seems punitive, if it's going to cost Eric money to do it, and it doesn't get us anything right now. And and really our goal is to make sure that the other phases are done before anything happens in A1 that's covered under the next thing. So, I mean, I would be happy to strike you out as well, as long as V covers what we're trying to get at there.
I agree.
I see Tony shaking his head. You agree also, Tony?
U and V
Yeah.
are redundant.
Yeah,
In effect, they're redundant.
yes, I agree as well.
As
But
long
I-
as W, I think W would cover what the village is concerned about.
W.
It's the new you.
It's the
No,
new
you-
you. We have the new you.
We are so fast.
You, what, old W.
Ask and you shall receive.
There you
We can start using Greek letters.
Oh, please, don't even go there.
Oh, man, you know,
I can never keep
no
them.
no
straight.
Omicrons for us.
No
No.
Omicrons for us.
So Lisa, is the board saying they want to get, as what is written right now, you can live without U and V, but W is gonna have to stay.
Right, except it's the new, what Natalie has just put up there is now,
Yes.
yes. Oh, stop it. Okay, yes, yes, just like you said. Eric, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm okay with the subdivision, but I did still want to talk about the A1, for the condition. And I understand the goal is to get everything done here as quickly as possible. But, I've also, as you know, it takes time to bring a tenant to a parcel. It takes time to get approval for the committee. I mean, it can take 6 months, it can take a year. They just got to know that they can do something here, because they won't even talk to me. Like if you show a piece of property that's not permitted to build that type of use there, they won't even talk to you because they're not going to take it to their board for approvals. Unless it's fully approved for the use and the type of use, and they can start, when they want, they won't even look at it.
Well,
So
use and type of
uses
use are already
are
spelled out.
Yeah, the uses are defined in the code.
But the uses are defined, so that's the first step. And the next step is they're going to go through the code to see, and if I have something on here that I can't start anything here till, possibly 2023, they'll tell me to come back in 2023 and we'll start talking about it.
Well, you
Does-
know the antidote for this.
I do know the antidote for this.
Yes, you do
But the
know the
same-
antidote for this.
But at the same point, a commercial project is completely different than a residential project. It's completely different builders. It's completely different. everything.
Very clear. It's just that I tell you right now, for me, and I can only speak for myself here, this is not something I'm flexible about. I don't see, given the history that we have, like I said, you know what the antidote is.
Can we just indulge you on what the downside is or what the fear is here with regard to condition, what's now called U, the former W, which is not allowing work to be completed in a parallel path. Like, obviously it helps the developer in terms of cost, but as far as the village's exposure and concern, if you could just articulate a little bit more the reasoning behind needing this.
I'd be happy to do that because we have some fears as well. The fear I have is, I don't know how far back your history goes with this project, but I first got on the board when when this first started. And my fear is that the commitments that were made to run and quote parallel, and I could provide you the written documents that your client committed to about parallel starting residential before the BJ's was completed, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are 11 years later. And now it's been started at least, but the parallel track idea did not work very well. Let's put it that way. So that's sharing my fear, and having the village just keep going on and on with this project, sucking our resources, our staff's resources and time and energy. That is the sharing of my fears for our village. That's how I see it costing the village. Maybe not in absolute money, but just the resources that have been devoted to this project for 11 years. I'd be happy to share all sorts of documentation with the number of times that your client has been to our various meetings, you could equate that with, you probably could quantify dollars, frankly, in terms of the cost. So the only goal that I want for the village to be met is this project B, area B, to be done. Eric has told us numerous times he's not familiar with residential. Well, we would like him to finish his residential for that very reason. Get it off his plate and move on so that we can also move on. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to contribute, but that's, I think, the insight that I can share from my perspective of having been involved with this for quite some time.
I'd ask if Eric wants to respond, because I know that we spent a lot of time getting me familiar with the, I guess the upside of this project is that's really seen a brand new invigorated life, and you folks on the board have seen it happening out there. You see it every day as construction gets closer and closer to meeting what the original goals were. And I think Eric would probably tell you there's some momentum happening here in terms of if the village is fully protected. Is there any reason we wouldn't want to allow this A1 portion of the project to build from that momentum? And Eric, why don't you just sort of comment on that a little bit?
I would like to just insert one more comment, though. One of the reasons that we have seen a renewed interest, and I even stated this to Eric, I said, ever since we put the stop work order out there has been an amazing uptick in the activity at this site. More has been done in the past 2 months, probably, however, to state that the original goals of this project have been met is really a stretch. If you go back and see what the original intent of this entire project, it's very disappointing. It has been. I'm not the only person to say this. Received these comments from all sorts of village residents about what was originally proposed for the PDA and where we are today. But that's water over the dam now. However, we have learned that we need to trust but verify. This is one of our few ways that we feel we can see progress made in Area B and perhaps completed.
Yeah, and I think you made a comment that you've seen more happen since the stop work order. Nothing has changed on the progress we've made since the stop work order, Lisa. I mean, we have the same momentum, the same thing. It's just what you see. All the work on the site itself was underground. That's what took a tremendous amount of time, putting the sewer, the water, the lines. We couldn't pave until we had certain things done. And nothing, the speed of what we've done is nothing's changed. You're seeing the final surface, I guess, the exterior finish being finished. So it looks like it's done, which is, but all the infrastructure and everything else, nothing has changed. It's subject to supplies arriving and everything else. We've had the same speed. So the stop work order, I mean, yeah, it's painful, but we didn't change the speed or bring more resources or anything else on subject to that. And the only thing that I'd ask the board to consider is that the goal here is to have the housing. And it's like, again, if you live in the city, you want to be able to walk and get everything you have. Right now, we've got a premier location where people can walk to Target, which is a grocery store. They can walk to BJ's, which is a grocery store. They can walk to Tops. They can walk to YMCA. They can walk to Chow's. And the one thing we're trying to do is put everything ahead. We're still trying to bring a coffee shop, as we represented the board before. But that's going to take some time. If I don't have the ability to tell the coffee shop, yeah, we can move forward after you get your approvals and might be a year down the road, they're not going to talk to me until I can get that time frame where they can take it to the board. That's just the way these bigger firms work. So again, I'm not trying to get around anything. I'm trying to, I'm on the same page you are, because the sooner I get these things finished, the better for a lot of reasons, but also I can start having rental income come in. So I'm not slowing down on anything.
So I'll share my comments, and they're similar, I think, to Lisa's. I think that the residential piece needs to get done first, and then you can start working on the commercial piece. I think that if you start doing the things in tandem, the board can't focus on those two things at once. It's been like that for the duration of this project for over a decade. So much is happening that we can't focus on it. And if we can't focus on it, we're not doing, our due diligence for the people who live here in the village. And that's not acceptable for us to not do our job. So I think the residential piece needs to happen. I think as it stands on the screen there, condition U is written the exact way that I would want to see it. And I just don't see myself being flexible on that.
Think that everything that's been said, I agree with. I'll probably say the same things in different words. The key word is focus. It's the word Michael just used 3 times. We have shown ourselves as a board to be tremendously incapable of speeding things up. We've been tremendously accommodating. And this one is, to use my words, we stand pat on it. We will not budge. That's it. Over, done. It's the last, the only tool we have left in our toolbox to force focus and force speed of completion of the residential area is to say no to co-development of the commercial area. The only tool left.
Monica or Jim, do you have anything to add?
I agree with everything.
I agree with everything that has been said so far. I think if I said any more, I'd simply be reiterating what has already been said by Lisa, by Mike, and by Tony.
Okay. So where does that leave us? Eric, you want to comment?
I'm not sure what I can say. I mean, I would like to be able to run a parallel path. I think I stated why. I thought, you would have that power in the special permit, because I've got to come back in front of you for a special permit. And you'd have the power to put conditions on me at that point when I came in front of you for it. So I think I understand what you're saying. I understand completely what you're saying. But again, the whole purpose of a special permit is just to allow people not to start building without you thoroughly reviewing your comments and putting conditions you think need to be put in place in order for that to happen.
I think it's been thoroughly demonstrated throughout this entire project that there are some things that people have said that the special permit can or cannot, let the board or the developer do. And I think that that's been proven that it doesn't work that way. So.
Okay.
How
And
many,
let me add that if you come back and ask us for a special permit for the commercial development, again, you're taxing us, our effort. The other developers, the other people of the village of Lansing deserve our time. And we've been giving your project more of our effort for over 10 years. I think this is an accurate statement because I've only been associated with the board for 5 years. We've given your project much more time in terms of planning board effort than any project, I think, in the last 10 years. I think that's a safe statement. So I think you, in a sense, owe the other people in the village an opportunity to use our time on them.
whose turn? Jim, was that you?
Yeah. In addition to what has been said, I would also just respond to Eric that if Eric recognizes and acknowledges that if he, say, were to come back, acknowledges that the board would have the power to evaluate this issue when he would hypothetically come in for a special permit, you're recognizing that the board could impose a condition such as this. So given the whole history, let's just do it now.
Okay. Is there, Natalie, is there anything else that I'd like to stop having the screen share so that I can see everyone. And if we're done,
Let me
are we
just-
done?
Could I suggest maybe we pull up just the planting plan to see how that ties back to ends, just so we can visually see it? Would that help?
Sure, we might as well. We'll say because,
Don't have the planting plan to pull up. So someone else will have to do
yeah,
that.
no, Mike Scott should have it, I think. Mike, do you have that available for us?
So while he's doing that, why is it that you can't see us when there's screen sharing? Because I
Oh,
can.
probably I'm doing something wrong. I can see some of you. I just can't see everyone because there's not enough space on my
Could be.
monitor.
You're on a
I
laptop?
could see you and I could see Mike and I could, well, Eric and Mr. Langy, but that was it.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike,
For example, now I can only see 3 people and myself of all things. I don't know why that's that way.
Mike,
but
Mike, I just emailed you a one.
This is not the final one.
No, there is a final one. Last meeting, Lisa, there's 2 things on here. See, we continue the trees down along the lower south side towards the Y.
Yeah, you
we put-
said you were gonna put some more and I think, but so this isn't the most recent one.
I think, Mike, I just emailed it to him, and it has the 3 lilac bushes in the front.
This just highlights my point that I would like the final plan attached to wherever so that we all know, because
Okay.
it is very confusing.
Is that what I emailed you, Mike?
That doesn't look any different.
No, it's not.
What's the
think
date
that's-
on the plan?
That's got a 2019 date on it, so I'm guessing that's not it.
Last revised?
I would say it's under the revision now that I know
Yeah,
how to
It's
read
a
that.
2019 date on the last revision.
Oh, it does? Okay.
I think, Mike, I emailed it to you. Should be in your inbox. I don't know how to put something up here.
Do you have it, Mike, or not? You think? You're on mute?
Yeah. that's
Yes,
it.
there it is. Those trees now go along. And then, and those on the oak crest, you said you were gonna put lilacs or something?
Right, that's in the front.
Okay,
So I just, so we could visually see what we're talking about, building the 2 dash buildings. Everybody realizes where those are. Yeah, those 2. Those are the trees behind it that we're talking about. So we, in the bushes in the front. So we're just trying to make sure the landscaping pertains to that area.
so, oh gosh, it's so frustrating, I can't. So going along with all of the conifers that start at the Chow's end by the Y
Yep,
and go along, would you delay planting? Are they far enough away from,
we would
Whatever.
do all those all the way down. They're far enough away.
they are? So the ones that that would be phase 1, you would do those.
Yes,
Phase 1, would you also do the small shrubbery and whatnot in front of the other 4 buildings?
yes.
I would think that to simplify this is pick out what is part of phase 2.
Yeah,
That would be anything around these buildings, including that tree
Right,
and possibly this row.
the
exactly.
little guys.
Yeah, exactly.
I would
Can
consider
I
that.
make a, sorry, can I just make a suggestion just for clarity? Can we get a plan? And Eric, if you want to just take a highlighter, color code, 2 colors, phase 1 and phase 2, what you think is the best planting plan for phase 1 and then for phase 2, so that we are all looking and we know exactly what we're talking about. And then we can make the decision from there. Because I get it, like I understand what we're doing, but I want specifically what bushes you will and will not plant in phase 1. So that way we're clear and just have it attached and then we can just approve that.
Right. Yeah, and I think Mike just summed it up. So those trees is green giants in the back and the bushes around the 2 buildings. That's it.
So if you would do that, what she said, though, that'll make it very easy.
Yeah.
You don't
I'll
need
do
to
that.
have new plans drawn up or anything, just, as she said, color
Just like
code.
2 colored highlighters, highlight the one for phase 1 and phase 2, so that we know exactly what we're talking about and then we'll approve that.
Yeah, it's a little more difficult because we've got to keep, it's all electronic. So I've got to have the guys do it. We'll get it.
Can't you just take one of the printed copies and highlight it?
Yeah, if that's the case, then I can also do that also.
Okay,
One of us will get it there. I'll get together with you, Eric, and we'll get it figured out.
All right, sounds good. I just wanted to raise that so we can look at the planting plan. Everything else is pretty much on that we've discussed.
Yeah, for me, that sounds perfectly reasonable. I just want it clear. Just like,
Okay.
cut and dry. So there's no, what about this tree? What about this bush? Like, we don't have those conversations.
now where is the rev, oh, where's the rev date on this one? Did it get not on there?
This, I had them just do the final plan. This is the final plan.
Okay,
So now it's not so final because I've got to highlight
but no, how do we know it's the final plan? How do you know that?
because I had, we raise it, the date on it.
Okay,
So,
You would reference the date in the final approval resolution as, dated November 19, 2021, as last revised to
whatever.
December 5th or 2021, whatever it ends up being. And that's how you know you've which plan you've actually captured for what the board is voting on in that moment.
Okay, so the one thing that I don't know is we've really talked about is this whole sidewalk thing that when we get to Hickory Hollow. And somewhere, I don't think that we need to deal with that now, certainly, but I think I would like to get it on the record, Eric, that you will make a commitment to when you do develop A1, that you will make the connections that are appropriate to, I think, the Y sidewalk or whatever, for the village. Because
Yes,
that,
I'll
I
make
think
a
is
commitment.
kind of a sticking point. It's not clear what's the best way to go with that. And I don't want to hold this up because of that.
I'll make that commitment because we still have to design the road going in there. We haven't done any of that, and the
Right.
sidewalks can wrap around that. So, I mean, that commitment is yes.
Okay,
So
So-
at this point, what you sent on your plans, Eric, there was a note on there about basically a painted crosswalk.
Yes.
An 8-foot wide painted crosswalk, and I believe on it, I'm trying to find a plan now, but I believe on that it was said that you'd be working with the DPW as far as where that started, where that ended. So that's basically satisfactory to the planning board if that works that way.
Monica?
So if we do approve that crosswalk now, will that impede our ability to put conditions on A1 when that comes around to make the connection?
No.
That's
So we
why,
we can always fix it in A1 if, once things become clear and the plan becomes more clear over there, we can figure out a way to make that connection with conditions on A1, correct?
It's
Yeah.
in your sidewalk law. Yes.
but it is pretty, it isn't clear what's the best solution right at the moment. It's going to take some input from our engineers and DPW and whatnot. And I think it's somewhat outside of this project in an odd way. I mean, it's part of the PDA, but the PDA is not yet complete. So it seems like a reasonable thing as long as we have Eric's commitment to address that when the time is appropriate. Okay, is there anything else to be discussed? So we will, we have some language that we will be readdressing. I'm hoping we can wrap this all up at our next meeting, and possibly approve, if everybody's in agreement, the special permit, I think. We have,
What is the date of the next meeting? I'm sorry.
the next meeting is December the 13th. It
The
is
only
a-
request I would make, that I've made in the past, and I apologize, is that happens to be a town board meeting that my presence is mandatory, but if you could be kind enough to slide us in at the top of the agenda, I could dedicate about 25 minutes up from 7 to 7:25, but then I have to get into that town board meeting.
Right.
Thank you.
We encourage participation in municipal government, so we'd be happy to do that.
I participate a lot.
Is there anything else that we want to mention to Eric or Mr. Langy before they, well, they're happy to stay with us as we go through our other business and whatnot, but anybody else have any other comments?
Hey, Lisa, can I show you something real quick?
Sure.
I want to make sure everyone's similar to being on the page. This is what I did as far as what would be part of phase 2 for the plantings.
Okay, so Eric, does that capture what you had in mind?
Perfect.
That's exactly what I just wanted to see.
Basically, I'll distribute this as long as everyone's in agreement, and we'll run with this.
How do you want,
but
how do you
sometimes,
want Natalie to mark that? Just
What's
put
that?
this.
What's
Can I
that?
mark?
you know what, though, does yellow copy, it used to be
For
the
N.
yellow doesn't copy if you do a copy. I don't know. You might have to use a different color. I don't know. But
I
good.
think what you could say is it's the arborvitae's or whatever behind the building, and you could say the shrubs around building, whatever, 8 and 14, whatever they are. That covers all those.
And then see the attached
Let's
sort
see
of
the
thing.
attached, if you want to just clarify it.
Okay, so we
That's
haven't,
just for the approval of the planting plan. That's not going into
Right.
special conditions, right?
Right.
A planting plan is a separate thing.
because we have not yet taken a vote on that.
What about, you can't see my screen. What about, I'll just say as delineated on the planting plan. Make reference to the planting plan in N.
Okay,
Is there, if I could ask the board, is there anything based on John's timing of the next meeting, the December 13th? Is there anything more we can do if we're just going for a vote on that meeting once the language cleaned up? Is there anything else we should address now while we have the time? Should we look at the planting plan and possibly?
well, I was gonna say, do you, Mike Scott, now that we've looked at that planting plan, we could approve the planting plan this evening for that matter. Unless there's a reason
Well,
not.
As Mr. Lang had said earlier, I mean, you can, once you approve the special permit, you're basically approving the planning plan that goes along with it.
Right.
Unless, Natalie, unless you think they should just do this separately.
No, I think also we should probably label what the yellow means. So I think there might be a little bit more to be done to that planting
Yeah,
plan.
I'll do something to that and I'll distribute it to Eric, Mr. Langy, and to the planning board.
Great.
If there's an issue, then, you know, I can't.
So,
say an issue.
In terms of some of the open items, there'll still be conditions that must be met to proceed, but for example, the easements, do the documents all have to be completed in order? No, they do not need to be completed for us to approve the special permit. So
Should we see the first draft of them at least?
I would like to, yes.
Well, typically, we make those subject to the village attorney's approval. So
Right.
it's uncommon for us to do all the drafting at this stage until we know that we have an approval, and then we work with the village attorney, of course, and then the village attorney will work with you folks.
Okay. All right.
Is there anything?
Okay,
else we can
so
address?
December the 13th, and we'll put you first in.
Okay,
We appreciate that. And Natalie, if you have some time, perhaps you and I could have a call just to cover all this. All
That'd be
right.
great.
Well, thank you again, everyone. We appreciate all the time you've dedicated here tonight.
Thank you too. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
In terms of other business, Mike, do you have any other business?
No, I mean, I kind of, some of the other stuff I kind of pushed up. I didn't know how long this would take. I mean, as Tony knows, we've got probably the final for the lighting commission, the exterior lighting.
Oh, good. The lighting code, good.
Yeah, well, so we'll get that to you next meeting.
All right.
Next meeting should be pretty action packed.
Are we expecting the beer property people to come?
At this point, Natalie has got the escrow language worked up. We'll send it over to them and it'll be up to them. If they fund it, then we will put out for the public hearing. And we will start discussing the final plat for the beer cluster subdivision.
Okay. Any other small things or anything? It's usually this time of year gets pretty quiet, but
We're about to, well, finalizing the mall subdivision.
oh, yes.
I spoke with Mike Gavin today and they're basically waiting on their bank to finish off stuff. I think we're 99.5% done at this point. The last 1 or 2 percentages taking a little bit of time, but I think we're getting there. And he has said to me that the client who is looking at the Bonton and the Sears would like to start the building permit process. So they're, from what I'm gathering, that they're looking to put into those 2 units, that they would have to come to the planning board for a special permit because it would be a change of use with an increase in parking.
Okay,
So that will come to you folks sometime. I would imagine come to you within the next couple of months.
but not for next meeting.
No,
Okay,
sorry, I was projecting.
okay, well, we like to have you project.
An
Okay,
increase in parking there isn't difficult, for 2 stores that are vacant. I know that's not the spirit of what you're mentioning, but
okay. Is everyone going to be available to attend that meeting? Oh, good, good. I think well, what are our next steps in terms, we do have to just finalize, be sure that our languages, Natalie, is correct, and then if we're fine with that, and does everybody feel comfortable with our discussion tonight and accepting these as our conditions?
I felt comfortable. I don't think Eric felt comfortable all the time.
Well, life is hard.
Honestly, no, I think it was a good give and take. I think it's very fair. I think all the conditions that were put out are more than fair and, help him as well as help us get this thing finished.
Yeah, I think we're pretty clear. We're pretty like-minded on that score, I think. One of the reasons I ask is I believe that the next BZA meeting is the night after our meeting. And so I think it would be helpful if we can finalize the special permit on the 13th. Trustee report. Tony, was that you?
Yes. And
Okay.
Mike, can you allow me to share screen?
I'd love to be able to allow you, Tony, to share. screen. You may share.
Okay, it was a very active meeting, so I decided I'd take notes. And the most important things, in my opinion, were the votes taken on the proposed cannabis laws, the 2 of them. The first one having to do with opting out of allowing licensing and establishing retail cannabis dispensaries within our village. This was the second public meeting on that issue. One couple actually from the public spoke out strongly in favor of opting in. The chair of the trustees asked the board of trustees if anybody wanted to opt out. Randy wanted to opt out, and he expressed eloquently his reasons, but the vote was 4 to opt in and 1 to opt out. So no new law necessary. By default, we will allow dispensing in the village. On the opting out of allowing the on-site consumption establishments, the vote was 5-0 to opt out. And so right now, there is local law number 4, which is the proposed local law F, unless somebody or some entity decides to challenge the law, in which case the mechanism kicks in for
Opting out.
proceed. Next item up was proposed changes to a bus stop on Uptown Road. TCAT made presentations on it, and they proposed to actually construct a shelter and a crosswalk on the north side of Uptown at the location where there's currently an unsheltered stop, and it's kind of dangerous and awkward. And so they've applied for a permit. DPW has to review the hydrology, the curb cuts, the lighting. They propose to have lighting in the shelter. And of course, the trustees will have to approve the project once DPW weighs in. They set a public hearing for the proposed local law G to amend the Village of Lansing Code sewer rents. That's going to happen at the next trustee meeting. And the final item was discuss Grand Road West options. You might have noticed that Grand Road received some minimal repaving recently.
And it is extraordinarily better than what was there before.
Yeah, it cost $18,000 of our money. There are negotiations right now about who's going to own that road or whether there's going to be an easement. The appraiser is appraising, and we'll come back to the trustees and tell the trustees what she thinks. Eventually, that road has to be totally reconstructed, and that's going to cost somebody over $140,000 to do that. And so at the last minute, the trustees approved the vote to skim coat ASAP, and in fact, that happened. So potholes temporarily unpotted or unholed.
I have a question for Mike.
Yeah. Go
Hey,
ahead.
that bus stop there, and believe me, I am not asking for additional stuff for the planning board to do. The
Yeah.
bus stop, though, why is that a trustee thing for them to review and do?
The
You
trust,
read my mind. I wondered the same thing.
Believe me, they can do it. I'm cool with that.
the part of it that's part of the trustee is that it's being built within the village right of way. So the trustees have to approve it being built in the right of way. Most of your other bus stops, for example, the one up around the corner, as you go up Uptown Road and you make the corner by the park up there, that's actually built on Cornell land and out of our right of way. So there was no need for board of trustee approval.
Interesting. Makes sense.
Where, I have a question. The bus stop that was addressed in the trustees meeting, where in Uptown Road is it? Because I think there are multiple bus stops in that road.
Yeah, it's the midway one, halfway up that block that has the apartment buildings.
Ready?
So past the McGuire,
Yes,
Yeah.
past McGuire, keep going.
yeah, and go midway up between where it makes the 90-degree turn
Yes.
by Dankert Park.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, I know where that is.
Yeah, so then, Mike, Scott, the thing would be, so if the trustees approve it, then it just becomes a simple building permit kind of thing?
Correct.
It's not a special permit, though.
No.
Okay, so that's why we won't see it.
No.
Okay. In terms of the Graham Road West, it says who's gonna own it? What are the choices?
I believe,
thought-
I believe we're going to end up owning it unless the easements or unless the transfer has changed since the last time I've heard about it. That was going to be dedicated to us as part of, I guess, the big switch, the triangle over by Pyramid.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why. Although I think there was some sort of, perhaps the physicians there.
Where,
there was
where,
some-
where the sticky issue is once again, the right of way that's on the south side of Graham Road West. There's Northeast Pediatrics and the other establishment on the corner. It's being able to get an easement with them
Oh,
to do some of the infrastructure at that point.
I would think they would want it, but could I ask too, is there any other, and what's going on with the council, the drug council?
Other
You know?
than they're claiming that they put it out to bid. and they've accepted a bid from some contractor, and I've been told for a couple weeks now that they'll be sending plans into us. The
Okay.
only thing we really have seen has gone to the lighting commission for their external lights. We're looking to have a meeting, I think it was next Wednesday, right, Tony? Is that what I had on there? I think something like that. Where we're going to have their representative, their architect, come in and discuss the lighting with us.
Okay, I was just wondering, whenever I drive by, I think no lights, nothing, no people in the parking lot. I was just kind of wondering if there was any movement. Okay, anybody else have anything they want to bring up, or? So December the 13th, and I think then we can see what's going on the 28th. I mean, in the past, it's been closer to the Christmas time, so, but this is after, so presumably there might be something on our agenda, but if not, I suppose it's possible that we wouldn't need a meeting. Don't count on it. Never count. So, okay. If there's no further comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Michael Baker. Mike Baker, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Monica, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, do you want